Hello everybody. This video is an analysis of a lesson on the US government and specifically the separation of powers called for in the United States Constitution. Now first, this lesson has been designed using the Understanding by Design strategy, which has three focal points. The first is to determine the goals of the overall course. The second is to create rubrics, which will determine how well the class is advancing towards those goals. And the third is to design the lessons themselves. Now, starting with the goals of the unit. Hopefully by the end of the class, students can understand the basic functions of all governments, more specifically what their purposes are and what their benefits are. Second, students will be able to pinpoint what it is about the United States government that is unique and why these oddities happened. Each class will have several focus questions. These focus questions will keep the teacher on track towards advancing towards the overall goal. This particular class has three focus questions. They are: what are the three branches of the federal government? Why the Constitution seeks to separate the branches? And finally, how well the Constitution actually succeeds in this goal. The rubrics for this class are divided into three broad types. The first type of rubric will be a self-assessment that the students complete, getting their opinion on how well they themselves think they understood the class content. Second, there will be informal or formative assessments throughout the class, which will take place by having the teacher observe the class while they do their group work, and as well as the teacher asking students questions during and after their group presentations. Finally, there will be a summative assessment at the end of the class to review the material and determine how well the students actually comprehended it. Before the class begins, there will be a pre-assessment and differentiation of the class to find out at what level the students actually read. The most advanced readers will be given direct excerpts from the original sources of the Constitution and other texts. More basic readers will be given these excerpts, but with paraphrasing to help them understand the more difficult concepts. And finally, the least advanced group, the catch-up group, will be given the paraphrased text as well as visual aids where necessary to help them understand. The first activity that the class will participate in is called a Do Now. In this activity, the students will understand what it is that governments actually do. The activity will consist of the students brainstorming on the roles of ancient medieval kings. Hopefully they will come up with activities like collecting and spending tax revenue, making war, arbitrating disputes, and enacting laws. After the Do Now, there will be a teacher-led activity called an I Do. This particular activity will divide the class into three groups, each group representing one of the three branches of government. Each group will then read the section of the Constitution which pertains to their branch of government and have a discussion on what it is that actually is meant by making the law, executing the law, and interpreting the law. Finally, the list of medieval powers that was created during the Do Now will be separated into each branch depending on which branch currently has the power in the list from the Do Now. After the I Do activity, there will be a cooperative activity between the teachers and the class called a We Do. In this particular activity, each group will be given two actions which encroach on the power of the other two groups. The task of each group is to support their own encroaching actions while defending against the encroaching actions of the other two groups. Finally, after the We Do, there will be a student-only activity called a You Do. This activity will consist of students reading case opinions on arbitrating between the other two branches of government when they try to usurp each other's power. Students will then compare the court opinions to the actual Constitution and write a quick summary on how well they think the court actually maintained the balance of power that was called for in the United States Constitution. As with any class, there are potential misconceptions that the teacher has to look out for. This particular class has at least three, and they are that the potential misconception that the U.S. government is the only or best type of government that there is, and that all other nations should emulate the U.S. government. In fact, there are, of course, several different types of government, each with their own benefits and drawbacks. The second potential misconception is that the federal government has full authority to do whatever it pleases, that it is actually an omnipotent entity. And the third potential misconception is that the Constitution called for political parties to balance federal power, to provide checks and balances on federal power. Finally, next steps. After this class, the first thing to do will be to study the actual constitutional limits on federal power. These are the limits that the Constitution expressly provides for to check the expansion of federal government. Next, the students will compare the United States federal government against both the governments of its individual states and the governments of other foreign nations. The class will end with a final assignment, which is to create a mock constitution for a hypothetical country. The students will be free to create whatever type of country that they wish and simply draw up a government that they think best represents it.